Hi, it's Dr. Z. This week, we will be reviewing the chapter on Introduction to Psychology and Psychological Research. Let's get started with this week's overview. By the end of this week, you'll be able to complete these district course competencies and learning objectives. For this week, please watch the overview video, and as an alternative, you may read the transcript of the video available here. To help you stay on track, check out this week's activity checklist by either downloading the checklist here or reviewing the checklist in the table below. This chapter is separated into 4 sections. The first section is the history of psychology. Students are surprised to learn that psychology has a long history, going back to the time of Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates. Please read the designated pages in the textbook and complete the corresponding Nearpod lesson. I created this fun world tour of the history of psychology using Google Earth. Fun fact, the letter W is pronounced as a V in the German language. So the father of psychology is known as Wilhelm Wundt. Now, I want to point out this box here entitled, "For the exam, be able to." This box lists specific learning objectives that I want you to know for this section of the textbook. I recommend taking notes and making sure that you understand and know the answer to these objectives. Additionally, any concept here in bold is considered important to know for the chapter quizzes and exams. The second section this week is Approaches to Psychology. Psychology continued to develop and expand beyond its foundation of introspection and structuralism that you will learn in the history of psychology. We now have 7 different contemporary approaches to psychology. The word approaches is just a fancy way of saying there are different ways or perspectives that psychology uses to explain why people think and do what they do. Please read the designated pages in the textbook and complete the corresponding Nearpod lesson. The third section for this week is psychological research. The scientific study of the mind and behavior involves conducting research. Please read the designated pages in the textbook and complete the corresponding Nearpod lesson. The last section for this week is research methods. A large part of this chapter is reviewing the different ways that psychology uses the scientific method to research human behavior and mental processes. Please read the designated pages in the textbook, complete the corresponding Nearpod lesson, and watch the assigned videos. One important note that I want to share. The videos posted on Canvas are all helpful at understanding the concepts after you have read the textbook. Please do not rely on only the videos for your learning. I encourage you to read the textbook first, complete the Nearpod lesson, and then watch the videos to strengthen your learning. Each week you will have an activity that expands on a topic or section of the chapter. This activity is often tied to the weekly discussion board and/or the application paper. This week's activity is called Give the Doctor Some Advice. I want you to think like a researcher. I want you to think like a psychologist and be able to explain common problems and experiments and how to control for them. The directions for this activity require you to download and print the activity handout. You will complete this handout on your own by writing the answers on the space provided in the handout. You will not submit this handout to me. This activity will prepare you for application paper number 1. Additionally, you will see a prep questions box here. I have provided some thought-provoking questions to reflect on after you've completed the activity handout. These reflection questions will prepare you for application paper number 1. The answers to these questions are for yourself only and they will help you to start thinking like a psychologist. Well, let's go to the assignments this week. The first assignment is the Nearpod lesson. In an online course, I will use Nearpod lessons to provide instruction on topics that I normally would have done in person. Please note this important heading. Nearpod lessons are due on Wednesdays at 11:59 p.m. and need to be completed before attempting the week's assignments. Now, I do want to point out that there's a minimum time needed to complete this lesson. This minimum time does not take into account the time you will need to take notes, complete short answer questions, engage in activities, and complete the summary quiz. The second assignment is discussion board number 1 on psych approaches. This discussion board ties back to the section on approaches to psychology. Each student will be assigned to one of the 7 approaches to psychology, and you'll see the table below. Your job is to create a fictional scenario from the point of view of your assigned approach that explains Pat's current situation. For example, if you're assigned to the psychodynamic approach, your Pat story will reflect key features of the psychodynamic approach, such as the unconscious and early childhood experiences. Please check out the helpful hints box for suggestions on this assignment. The third assignment is the chapter quiz. Please make sure to complete the reading, Nearpod lesson, and online activities for this week's material before taking the quiz. You will only have one attempt. You will be required to use Respondus Lockdown Browser for this quiz. No books or notes are allowed during chapter quizzes. Now, I know, my friends, you could choose to cheat on these weekly quizzes and I would never know. However, you would be harming yourself because these quizzes really prepare you for the exams in this course. And finally, the last assignment for this week is application paper number 1. The application paper will always consist of 4 questions. The first 3 questions tie back to sections of the chapter and/or the weekly activity. For example, this week, Question 1 and Question 2 tie back to the section on approaches to psychology. Question 3 reviews the section on research methods and the activity Give the Doctor Some Advice. Now, the last question will always be your wow moment for this week. I want you to reflect on what you learned online and in the textbook this week. This is one of my favorite questions to grade because each student shares their unique take on learning Psych 101. Now, it is important to note that each question requires that you provide a personal example and either a textbook or video reference to support your answer. Please remember to use APA citation for both textbook and video responses, or video references. And with that, my friends, you will have successfully completed this week's module. I look forward to reading your awesome assignments this week.